2017 has now been called to order. We will have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Bow our heads, please. Heavenly Father, we come this evening in the most humble and gracious way we know how, giving thanks upon all the many blessings you restored upon us as your Christian people. We just want to ask a special blessing upon the state of Louisiana, the city, and the parish of Calcasieu. And we just ask that for everyone that's in attendance here tonight, Father, that feel your loving arms around them and embracing them. For all the things that they do to better others in their conditions, we ask these blessings upon your Son's name tonight. Also, Heavenly Father, we ask that each juror that's standing tonight be honest, fair, and open to every situation to where we can give the people of Calcasieu Parish the best quality of life because we feel they deserve it. We ask these many blessings in your Son named Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Please face the flag, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Yes, sir.
Oh, glad.
Here.
Parish,
Here.
Vice President Green,
Here.
Mr. Collins,
Here.
Mr. Farnum,
Here.
Mr. Guillory,
Yeah.
Ms. Lady,
Here.
Dr. Mackey, Ms. Mayo,
Here.
Mr. McMillan,
Here.
Mr. Scott,
Here.
Mr. Trimmie was unable to attend this evening, Mr. White,
Here.
and President Gentry.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Just a few house cleaning items. For those of you that have cell phones, pages, we ask that you would put those devices to silence, please, so that we can conduct our meeting on tonight. And if there's anyone that would like to speak on any of the items that's on tonight's agenda, we would ask that you would fill out one of the blue slips that's in the rear of the room, and please bring those slips to the front to Ms. Jessica or either Ms. Kathy. With that, we will move on to item number 4. Hold a public hearing at 6 p.m. We're going to move that item back because we haven't gotten to the 6 p.m. time yet. I would ask that my Vice President please remind me of that note.
Absolutely.
Moving on to item number 5. Presentation of certificates to the players and the coaches of the South Lake Charles Blue All-Star Team in recognition of winning the 2017 Louisiana State T-Ball Championship. Mr. Brain.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will you join me down there, please, sir?
I'll be more than happy to.
Look at it. That's awesome.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank my colleagues for allowing me this opportunity to present the players and the coaches for the South Lake Charles Blue All-Star Team, their state championship. And I'm not going to take a lot of time speaking about it or talk about it, but I do want to say that some of these players I watched from day one, from the first game to, I missed the championship game because I was on vacation, but there's some good, awesome little players, and I see a lot of big leaguers in the future, and I just want to give them a big hand of the great job that they did and how hard they played, and I'm really proud of all of them. So let's give them a hand. I'm going to call out, I'm going to read the certificate, and then I'm going to call out the player's name. So if y'all would come up and line up against the wall, and then I'm going to call out the coaches. Is Coach Crookshank here tonight? Okay, good. I'm going to let you say a few words, Coach, if you don't mind. Kind of talk about the playoff games, and then I'm going to let President Guidry talk. Let me read the certificate of recognition. Presented by the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury on the 13th day of July, 2017, the South Lake Charles Blue All-Star Team for the victorious season and the winning 2017 Louisiana T-Ball State Championship. Okay, I'm going to call your name. Just come on up if y'all want to go ahead and line up. Luke Crookshank. And then I'm going to have y'all come around here. We're going to take a picture. Noah Broussard. Noah Broussard.
Look at little me. Force be with you, Lou.
Luke Governelli. This little guy got a special place in my heart. He's my grandson, Brody Como. I'm proud of him. Tate Finette. Chase Williams. Beckett Bertrand. Reed Sawyer. Davis Paul. Somebody make sure that. Renly Anderson. That little dude right there is a hitter.
Yeah, he is. He's kin to also President Kevin Guidry.
Hit the ball. They all do. Max Hoffman. Max here. Max Cornahan. Jackson Downs. Owen Alexandra.
What's up, Reed?
Ashton Trahan. Vacation. Okay. Lee Sawyer. Coach. Joey Ardwan.
What up, boy? What's up? Congratulations.
Good job, man. Congratulations.
He's gonna.
Good job, guys.
Hey, man, congratulations.
Congratulations, buddy.
Justin Governelli.
Just wanna holler over there. Open your eyes.
Think of something.
This is Barb's starting lineup in the next 10 years. Barb St. Louis. How old are they now? Let me see that ring.
And Jason Cruikshank.
Is he kin to Josh Cruikshank? Oh, is it? Josh is a little brother? No, Jason. Jason. Oh, Jason. It's Josh.
He's gonna go to.
Congratulations.
And the hair looks
Yeah, man. All right. I want to thank all the police jurors for having us and recognizing the team. I'm proud of all the kids. We practiced for about a straight month in all the rain and all the heat and everything else we had. We practiced in the mud. They came together in the playoffs for state. I mean, we couldn't do nothing wrong. We looked like a pro T-ball team, but I wish we could have kept going. But I'm proud of them, and thank y'all. I think we outscored the other teams out of the 4 games like 120 to 40 something.
Just to add a little bit, Coach, I know that it's pretty hard and taking time out. I know you guys all have jobs and everything, but the couple of people that I want to thank more so than anybody are the parents of these kids. Why don't you guys stand so we can recognize you guys tonight? Because you guys made sacrifices, take off from work, travel, and to be with your kids. And I think that means more than anything to these little young kids right here. And we just want you to just continue to inspire them and help them on their way to be, hopefully, big league players one day. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, everybody needs to squish in, but no, don't get in front of anybody.
Tall guys.
This is going to be on the front page of American Press, right?
Maybe. Okay, maybe what we could do is get the grown-ups behind the kids. What do you think?
Grown-ups and Kevin.
Okay, now.
Kevin, you need to lay down in front.
Okay, I want to see everybody's faces. Okay, I can't see this little guy right here. That's right, push it in.
Within the drama, you know?
All right, all right.
How they coming?
So when I count to three, I want everybody to say winning,
Granddaughter
okay?
works there.
1,
Performance.
2, 3. And we'll do one more. 1, 2, 3. Woo! That looks good. Congratulations.
Yeah. You should have said that at least one time in your life.
We'll give the kids a few minutes to clear out, and we'll resume our meeting.
I don't have personal space no more.
Thank you guys so much for being here.
The whole crowd left. We can go now.
I just stay in my little corner.
That's right.
Corners are good.
That's right.
I met the day early, it was cheaper.
No, that's,
Moving on to item number 6, presentation of certificates to members of the Hamilton Christian Academies Beta Club in recognition of accomplishments at the National Beta Club Convention. I want to ask this Miss Sharon Coleman, has she made it? Is she present? Would she come up at this time, please? I would like to just say to these young ladies, what an outstanding job that they've done, actually competing in the state and advancing to the nationals. And what it is about Beta, it builds character, and I think that it builds an understanding of role models as to what we're going to see in the future. And I think that you've done an outstanding job in leading these young ladies to do what they've done. And if I'm not mistaken, in the finals competition, I think it was 10 actual groups, and I think 8 of them was boys, and there were 2 female groups. You girls rock, okay? I don't know if those guys liked it that much, but you girls rock. But I just want to say, great job, and you guys will be our future, and that's why I'm more concerned about what it is that you young ladies are doing, because when we look at you, the bright minds that you ladies have will be the future of this parish and city. So we want to, in any way we possibly can, encourage you to continue to do the great work that you're doing. And what it is, Ms. Sharon, I would like you to come up and just tell us a little bit about the Beta Club and basically what you guys had to do to advance from state on to the nationals. And just give us a little brief overview of what all took place in doing all that, if you would.
I need to install pumps.
Our senior Beta Club consists of 9th through 12th graders. It's an academic club, but not only is it based on their grades, which they have to have final grades of A's and B's, but it does stress character and leadership and service. The Beta motto is let us lead by serving others. Well, in senior Beta, we compete at state, and to advance to nationals, the girls have to place at state. Our Beta Build team of 5 won first place at state. So that assured them of going to nationals, and then they placed first place at nationals. So quite an honor there. Their project involved a Rube Goldberg mechanical engineering type project. It had to have 5 steps. Our girls' project had 9 steps. And so at nationals, they were kind of thrown a curve. An additional criteria was given to them, and they had to impromptu, within their 2-hour time, change the ending step so that their project would work. And they were quite surprised, and well, not surprised, but we were confident in them, but they did an awesome job. And then we had another student who placed 3rd in on-site art at state. That qualified her, and she competed at nationals. She placed in the top 10, and so we're very proud of her accomplishments in the art category.
Wonderful. Thank you. And we have some stickers for the ladies tonight, so if you all would stand and come forth, ladies. I'm going to go ahead and read the first one, which we have for all of you ladies. It says, Certificate of Recognition presented by the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury on this day, 13th day of July, 2017, to Ms. Bailey Bogard of Hamilton Christian Academy, Beta Club, in honor and recognition of placing first place their Beta Club project at the National Beta Club Convention held recently in Orlando, Florida. To all of you, we wish you the best, and we wish continued success in all your endeavors. Signed by President Kevin Guidry. This next one goes to Ms. Kristen Daughtry.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Guy, I think my picture's gonna look a lot better than yours.
No, I don't think so.
Mason Gillard?
No, it may.
Blind does, that button.
He must have shined.
Miss J.G. She looked familiar. I'm not gonna say nothing, but she just looked familiar. And Abby Talk.
I wish I was president.
Sydney is.
No, I don't.
You young ladies did a great job. Now we're gonna take one group picture. Y'all make me look good.
That's not the
That's impossible.
Yes, ma'am. That's the reason why these girls won it.
Hey, y'all, on 3, it's 1, 2, 3.
Say when.
Say beta. On 1.
Winning.
On 3, say beta. 1, 2, 3. Beta. And we're getting one more. 1, 2, 3. Beta. All right.
Congratulations. Let's give them a big round of applause, guys. Great job. Thank you so much.
You want to wait on 7? Come back at 7 after 6 o'clock.
Nope, matter of fact, check. Said. Hey. You gotta do what you gotta do. It's gonna happen again. I thought about it, we could have easily.
Needed it. Just scroll through them, we can kind of knock it out. So we're not gonna
Skip 7.
No.
Take too long. Skip 7.
Thank you guys again for coming out. We're going to go ahead and move on to item number 8. Take appropriate actions on applications for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Crane.
Mr. President, we have one application before you tonight. We recommend it be approved.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Landry.
Point of
Any
order, Mr.
discussion?
President, you missed number 7.
We're going to come back to it.
No, we're going to go ahead and come back to number 7. I apologize, Mr. Andrew.
Don't apologize, I didn't know.
Yeah, I appreciate you being so attentive, though. Thank you so much.
got it.
But we're going to come back to number 7.
All right. That works for me.
Thank you. Motion carry. Number 9, consideration approving payments of
Move on, nine.
invoices
Second.
and advice regarding monthly budget to actual comparisons. I have a motion by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carry. Item number 10, consideration approving the minutes of the regular police meeting.
Second.
July 26, June 26, 2017. I have a motion by Mr. Forner and a second by Mr. Guillory. Any discussion? What do I do with my glasses, y'all? Motion carried.
Okay, find your glasses.
All right. Here we go.
You look very beta.
He's winning.
I can see. All right, moving on to item number 11. Take appropriate actions on a request by Gerald Lewis to abandon and revoke the original dedication of the east 19.3 feet of Ryan Lane in Ward 3.
Move to uphold planning and zoning.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Brame to uphold planning and zoning, and a second by Mr. Landry. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, July 11, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 12, take appropriate actions on a request by AMAC LLC to rezone from light industrial to recreational vehicle park, to allow recreational vehicle park at 2470 Toomey Road in Ward 7. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, July 11, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted. Mr. Barris?
Discussion.
Okay.
Discussion.
Motion to discuss.
We have motion to discuss. Mr. Barris?
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
President.
Thank you, Mr.
President,
Lane.
is the applicant for this here?
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item?
Okay, Mr. Crane, I see there that stipulation number 5, that a drainage impact analysis will be required. Don't they have to get with the, there's a drainage lateral going through this property, okay? Aren't they, where does it say in here that they need to get with the gravity drainage board and work out their easement issues?
Well, I think there's there's a lateral that's further south
Right.
of where they're developing the property. And I do think it's on the property, but it's way further south.
That's all that's left on this property to develop is the southernmost part.
Correct.
So it comes down. I just want to make sure that gravity drainage board has access to that lateral. And I don't know if I need to make a stipulation of where they need to meet with them, or where does that come in?
We can certainly direct them to the gravity drainage district to make sure that they're not impacting anything along that lateral. We can certainly do that.
Please do. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Barris, is that motion to uphold planning and zoning?
Motion to uphold planning and zoning
With stipulation.
with the stipulation.
With stipulations, and I have a second by Mr. Andrew Point. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. I'm going to go ahead and do 13, and we're going to come back to our 6 o'clock item after that one. 13, take appropriate actions on a request by George Clyde and wife to rezone from single-family residential and manufactured home park to recreational vehicle park, to allow the recreational vehicle park at
Move to
4400
overturn
Highway
planning and
27
zoning.
in Ward 4. I have a motion by Mr. Barris to uphold planning and zoning.
No, overturn.
Overturn? Let me read the Planning and Zoning Board. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, July 11, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. Mr. Barris moved that he would like to overturn Planning and Zoning, and Mr. White seconded that. Is there any discussion? Any objection?
I would like to add something here.
You have the floor, Mr. Barris.
Thank you, President Guidry. Planning and Zoning Department, I understand your function as, to look at things in a vacuum from a land use perspective only. It's our job to step outside that vacuum and listen to the folks that are going to have to, the affected folks around this situation, and that's what I'm doing. I've received a handful of calls, a good handful, you know, and me knowing what I know about that area, the traffic, the drainage is not great at all. I just think something else right there. You know, it's a potentially 160 vehicles coming in and out right there. Also, when you build up, those are some of the concerns of the residents and landowners in that immediate area. I just wanted to go on record and say that, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barris. We have,
I just want to ask.
Go ahead,
is
Mr.
the
Gillum.
applicant here? Is the applicant here by any chance?
is the applicant here? Would you like to come forth and speak on this item, sir? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
George Clyde, 4400 Highway 27 South. In Sulphur, Louisiana.
Tony, do you have a question? I was just going to ask him a little bit about the
Tell
project.
us about the project.
Tell us a little bit about the project. And everything.
Oh, it was, what we have planned, we're just looking, it's already zoned, I'm not sure if y'all have the plat and whatnot, but it's already zoned manufactured home. It's basically 9.3 acres, I think. And the first third is a commercial, okay? The first front, let's call it the front 3 acres. I don't know if we have anything to look at. And then the back 6 acres is already manufactured home. So the front 3 is commercial, the back 6, let's call it, is already manufactured home. So all I'm trying to get is rezone it from manufactured to RV, what's already manufactured. And then the commercial, there's a little strip that we also said RV just for a driveway. So if you look up there, that little, what's already the RV spaces is already manufactured home. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think prior to 2014, manufactured home and RV was the same thing. But now if you have a manufactured home park, you need to get it, if you want RVs, you have to get it rezoned to RV. Now, if you look at that prior one, you can see where all the spots are going to be for the RVs is already zoned manufactured home. So we're not trying to take something that hasn't already been zoned manufactured and make it into RV or something that's already been, you know, a commercial piece of property. This thing actually, I think back in '82, somebody wanted to put manufactured homes there, and that's when they, I think it might have originally been zoned that. But this thing's been zoned manufactured home and been planned for manufactured home for a long time. And so I don't think this particular request is something that's over and beyond. I think as far as what Mr. Barris is saying, I mean, we'll be happy to get the DOT permits. I mean, I think that's presumptive from somebody to say that this highway, if you've been down that highway over the past year, adding 80 more cars to Highway 27 coming out of Walker Road and down north or south ain't gonna make a difference. I don't even know what percentage of the traffic that probably is, but it's probably less than 0.1%. So I don't think it'd be any problem getting DOT approval there. And like I said, I mean, there's a probably, I'm not quite sure the number, but right next door, if you look at that other plot, there's a mobile home park, Sweet Gum, I believe is the name of it. It's been there forever. You know, there's no neighbors around it. Right there, you can see just to the north is a large mobile home park. There's a little buffer right there where we plan on putting RVs. And, you know, I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't really see, you know, there's no commercial, you know, there's plenty of buffer right there for everybody right next door to a mobile home park and this is already zoned mobile home. You know.
Go ahead, Mr. Barris.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Clyde. We have some, Gerard.
So I'll let Mr. Barris.
Well, one of the bigger concerns that I got calls about was the land to the south, just the potential property value affected, and you know, and I understand you're right that there could be mobile homes right there right now.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I don't really get what the value of the property to the south is. I mean, that's,
those are just the concerns. of
yeah,
that
no, I'm just saying
property.
that there's a canal that runs between this property and that property to the south. There's no, you know, you can't even see it from the road. I mean, you know, once something gets put on, there, I don't really understand that, how it affected that property at all.
So are you guys gonna build this out? I mean, y'all gonna stay with this thing? This is gonna be a business venture? What's,
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be developed as that plan shows. Yeah.
who's developing it?
It's going to be, well, we're trying to get approved so it can be sold to Goldwater LLC, which is a company out of Lafayette to do the park, which was zoning, which we told zoning and planning at the time when
Okay.
they approved it.
See, that's, I guess, and that's kind of where I kind of have a kink. We've done one of these before, a couple of things like this, and we make a deal with you,
Yeah,
and then you're gone. And then we got to deal with someone who comes in and they say, well, I didn't make that deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we've hit some snags like that before. And
I mean, I know, I mean, I've talked to the man, I mean, he is from Lafayette, I think he's, you know, has plenty of financing, and, you know, he's gonna do it right. As zoning and planning said, he needs to do it like the plan states, which is gonna be concrete, everything nice, and it's not gonna be some kind of gravel road deal. I mean, he's planning on doing it like zoning and planning has approved it to be done. You know,
We have,
not gonna be,
we have some other jurors, Ms. Clyde, that want to
Sure.
have some discussion. Mr. Forner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess 1256 and 27 is a nightmare. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
absolute nightmare. And if you tried to squeeze 8 more cars into that highway right now, it could take hours. We sat, Judd and I went on an expedition today, and we sat at a red light through 3 cycles to get 3 vehicles through it.
yeah.
And anything that you pour into 1256 right now is just icing on the cake. There's no way that I'll support any kind of activity like this up and down that highway until something drastically different happens out there. And right now, that area is kind of a built-in marshy detention area, that whole area, and the trailer park goes underwater. Everything around that trailer park goes underwater. We met with one of the business people out there today that it's 32 inches of water along 27 or 1256 that they can't even access their business during the rain events that we're having. So I'm definitely opposed to this, and that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forner.
I mean,
Mr. Scott.
Mr. Crane,
Yes, sir.
correct me if I'm wrong, but an RV park, they're allowed 2 vehicles per spot? Is that, I think I read in our ordinance somewhere where you're allowed like 2 vehicles
Yeah,
per
required.
spot.
Yes.
Manufactured home, you can park 7 cars at a manufactured home if you want, correct? I mean, we don't have a restriction on how many cars you can park at a manufactured home in a manufactured home park.
No, there's,
So, how many
there's a minimum requirement
Right.
that you have to provide,
Yeah,
but we
how
don't
many
have
vehicles they can park there? There's no requirement.
no maximum.
No maximum.
That's correct.
Now,
Either way.
how many manufactured homes do you think they could put on this piece of property compared to an RV? I know the
Well,
RVs are smaller.
the manufactured home park requirement, the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet versus 2,000 square feet.
So it's drastically different,
Basically double the distance.
Yeah.
but you could put double the cars there if they want. I mean, I've seen mobile home parks with lots of cars parked in them. So I just have a hard time. I mean, I won't be able to vote to overturn it. I understand the drainage problems and the water problems and the neighbor problems and the value problems, but at the end of the day, it's a private piece of property. He's done everything that he needs to do, you know, followed all the procedures, everything, the engineering will have to be done, the drainage analysis. They put a parking ride with 500 or 600 cars less than a quarter mile from this thing, right around the corner. I mean, traffic at the end of the day, it's traffic. So if we're gonna say that this is just not suitable because of traffic and drainage, is anywhere in our parish suitable anymore? I mean, it's just really, at the end of the day, I won't be able to overturn something that he has to do everything, traffic analysis, the state, the drainage. I mean, he's gotta follow all of our procedures, so how can we even tell him no would he have legal grounds to come back, Mr. Gabb, and say, look, I did everything or not?
The decision for zoning is still your decision. And that's what we're here to make. So you can make that decision.
All right. And at the end of the day, Mr. Crane, how many people come in here and need to get the zoning changed before they can sell property? It's standard around. I mean, that's what people want. If you get the zoning, I want this property. So the owner comes in, he applies for it. If he gets it, he sells the property. I mean, it happens like a lot.
Yeah, most of the time, the transfer of the property is contingent upon the rezoning of the property. If they have a sale, contingent upon it.
I would rather see more traffic on 27 than a road that it wouldn't take, that's not full of traffic. I mean, it's just traffic on that road. That's what it's designed. It is 27. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. White.
Just to clarify with the traffic situation, we know it's going to be double the manufactured, or double the RVs than manufactured homes, but what's the frequency of those RVs entering and exiting that RV park versus a mobile home being put in? So let's not forget the fact that these trailer house or RVs are going to be coming in and out of 27 where there's already a congested problem there. I went and visited the site today as well. And I agree with what they said. The traffic's horrible. Now we're putting RVs right back on 27 in and out because we know that RVs, they're not like a mobile home. Mobile homes stay there for a long period of time. RVs are in and out. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Guillory.
I just want to ask Mr. Barrett, do you think you all could get together maybe and come up with something? And just asking to see if y'all can come up with something, get together, you and this gentleman and people who was upset about it.
I'm not opposed to that. I can't speak for the people who called me, so, I just, like I said, I live there, I get the calls. Mr. Scott, let's take a ride one day soon, and let you see what that's about. I know it's bad all over, we're hearing that, but it's very close to that intersection, probably about 75 yards, 100 yards from that intersection. You got a bank entrance right there. Anyway, it's just, like I said, I'm just conveying the sentiments of my constituents, and that's what I'm here to do.
Thank you, Mr. Barris. Hold on, Mr. Guillory. I have a remark by Mr. Scott. Go ahead.
Since you did, ask me, I don't mind replying. I just finished working at that intersection for 3 months at that RV park, that A-plus RV park and motel. I had to wait in that traffic. I drive up and down that road all the time, so I understand that entire area. And there are RV parks already out there. There are people driving up and down that road. Thank goodness there's decent people to let me in and out of that place so I can actually get on the road at least. So, I feel for all these situations. I don't think there's a right or wrong in this. I think you're doing the right job, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's just part of the job. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I just want to, is it any way, I know we got motion on the floor, is it any way we could defer it for maybe 30 days and you all get together and talk about it? Because it's not a bad project, and I'm with Mr. Dennis on, we're going to have travel through Calcasieu Parish, really.
Yeah.
And I'm just seeing if there's anything we can do.
Go ahead. You have the floor, Mr.
Yeah, I
Scott. Go
mean,
ahead.
like Mr. Scott's saying, to say that this road can't handle any more cars, what are you going to do when Driftwood LNG gets built? You going to deny it? That's what I would ask Mr. Barris. Is that going to get denied? That's going to be a lot more than 85 cars. You know where Driftwood's going to be?
That won't come up actually before us.
It's already zoned.
Well,
It's already zoned.
Yeah, but my point is, let's just say it was. It's going to be built. How many more cars is that going to bring? Maybe more than 85, maybe 8,500. To say that 85 cars is affect Highway 27 is just not right. And to Mr. Scott's point, less than half a mile, Semper just built a huge parking lot that literally at 7 a.m. and 5 a.m. every day, probably 500 cars pour out of. And A-plus trailer RV park, which is less than a mile from this, nice trailer park, just like this one's gonna be. If you look at it, there's not RVs pulling in and out of there every day. It's just not. People get there, they work there, they might be there a year, 2, 3 years. It's not an RV traffic. I mean, that's what the area is. I mean, it's not like it's some kind of shopping mall that, that's what the area is. I mean.
I'll let you have the last comment, Mr. Barris.
I'd like to actually retract my motion, and I'd like to make a motion to defer, and that way me and Mr. Clyde and any other stakeholders that we can get in touch with can sit down and see about, getting this straightened out.
Mr. Barris had a motion to go ahead and defer for 30 days. Would that be all right with you, Mr. White, as a second?
Yes.
We have a second to defer for 30 days. Thank you, Mr. Clyde, for
Okay.
coming out this evening.
All right, thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take our 6 o'clock action at this time. We had a motion? Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 4, hold a public hearing at 6 p.m. ordering said owners to show cause as to why the structure and said properties should not be condemned. David Robinson, please state your name and position with the parish, please, sir.
David Robinson, Code Enforcement Supervisor, Planning and Development. Good evening.
How you doing? Item A, 1688 Highway 109, South Benton area. Mr. Robinson.
There's one house on this property. The owners are Rayleigh Gilbert and George Jude Constance, and we recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days. So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? Item A carries. Item B.
Mr. Guidry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have to allow for comment from the audience before we take.
Is there anyone in the audience, I didn't get any blue slips, so I didn't think that was. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on A? Is there anyone in the audience? Seeing none? Moving on to item B.
Mr. Good, I'm sorry to interrupt again, and I may have missed it, but now we need to take action. Now, once the opportunity is given for a comment, now we need to take action again. So
Okay.
I'm sorry to add that addition.
That's okay, we're going to do it. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none? Motion carried. Item B, 7544 Ling Road, South Lake Charles area. Mr. Robinson.
There's one manufactured home with an addition on this property. The owner of record is Shelby Wynn Jr. et al. We recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. White. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none? Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item C, 200 Dekker Street, East Lake Charles area. Mr. Robinson.
There's one house on the property. The owner is Adair Asset Management, and we recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
So move.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Guillory. Is there anyone in the audience like to comment on this item? Seeing none? Is there any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item D, 410 Willett Lane, Westlake area. Mr. Robinson.
There's one house on this property. The owner is a Keith Rosler et al. We recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none? Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Moving on to item number 7, receive report from staff regarding proposed revisions to Chapter 26 of the Code of Ordinance of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, pertaining to drainage standards. At this time, I would call on Mr. Beam.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, we do have a report for you, but it's more of an update. Alan's going to cover some key points of the more recent developments, and also an update, because we do get a lot of questions on this, on the drainage project side and the plans we are working on for that. We are not, just to clarify, we're not seeking any action tonight. This is more of an update, and certainly allow y'all any questions you may have on where we are. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Alan.
You got the floor, Mr. Wainwright.
Thank you, President Guidry. I think you all have the presentation on your computers. If you remind you to hit the little star button if you want to see it a little closer out. Some of these slides may get hard to see, but just get right into it. So the intent of tonight is to give you an update on the ordinances and where we stand, some of the changes we're incorporating based on feedback. But before we do that, like Brian alluded to, I'd really like to talk a little bit about capital improvement. And the reason for that really has been the question of late. As you ponder ordinance changes, the common question has been that, or really the number one question is, well, oh, there it is. Okay, I didn't realize it had a little trick in that one. But really the question is being, in lieu of ordinance changes, what is the parish's plan to improve the roadside ditches, and really why not do all that first before you change the regulations? So it's kind of a combination question. I really like trying to address that and give you a little better sense of the degree of things that are going on in the capital program so that you have a better understanding of all the moving parts and all the projects that are moving through that program. So I think, number one, basically the answer to that question would be that you have to understand that the development standards, the projects that people are talking about, and the maintenance of the existing system are all integral parts of a bigger system. To defer any one of those parts would really be a mistake. So, but tonight, like I said, we'll focus on what's happening in maintenance, what's happening in capital, so that you get a little clearer picture that, we're attempting to move this ball in all corners as fast as we can on all fronts. To really answer the maintenance program and understand it, I think it is important to understand really the difference in maintenance and capital. And they get confused, the line gets blurred a lot. We get asked to do a lot of things, and you think it'd be worth a little time to just kind of discuss the differences there so we understand how we have to try and deal with these projects inside our department. So first off, the Public Works Department is a maintenance department. Maintenance of ditches and culverts, things are more in line with clearing and mowing, flushing culverts, fixing sinkholes, fixing repairs, erosion things, and really shoulder repairs. So those are maintenance items. And every now and then I'll talk to some of you, it's like at your house, compared to your house. There's maintenance items, and then if you add a room onto your house, that's a capital improvement. Well, capital improvement is more in the line with the things of enlarging ditches and changing out all the culverts and enlarging the culverts, regrading ditches so that you change everything out so they're sort of new and they work better, rerouting drainage from one direction to another, or maybe installing an entire new system. So just get a sense of the scale, and that's what governs how we have to deal with it inside our departments. So to focus a bit on the capital projects, which are really, at the end of the day, the number one thing that especially if you're experiencing a problem, you want to see happen near your location, and I understand that. So the projects themselves, we break them down into three categories. There's the big, high-level watershed studies that we're doing. We have programs that are moving. We have various consultant firms that will work with that are experienced in that, and we're working on those fronts. And those studies help us to understand the long-term projects, the ones that are really going to give us the biggest bang for the buck. It'll help build a list, if you would, of things we should do. It'll also help us build best management practices for inside the watersheds. The type of project that comes out of a study is generally going to be a regional watershed project. And these are projects that are at a scale where we feel like they're on a major lateral. They impact the entire floodplain. They do take some additional modeling. They are generally going to be a capacity upgrade to that lateral, or we're looking at a lot of regional detention options. So in that middle part of this particular slide, there's 7 projects that are on the board right now that are in this category. 5 of them are capacity upgrades. They're literally enlarging a ditch somewhere. Or taking trees out of Bear Creek or something like that. So it's all about trying to get more water to pass through the existing ditch one way or another. There's 2 big regional detention pond facilities that are being studied, and one is moving into engineering phases very soon, that are there to really starve the drainage system of water and hold it and park it on the side so that the less flooding happens downstream. In addition to those projects, we have at least 4 other sites. You probably could move that up to 5 to 6 if you, depending on the conversations you're in, but there's at least 4 other major locations where we're looking for regional detention. We feel like we can have major impact to the overall watershed. But really, the last part of the slide is what people are worried about as much as anything, because these are street-level projects that happen out in front of your house that you really feel like, if you're having problems, is the thing that's going to help you the most. And so we have on the board right now at least 50. It varies from day to day because some get done, some come on, depending on the rains we're having and the effects. But there's 50-plus projects that are moving through the engineering process. And what I mean by that is my staff is going out to do survey work, to do the engineering work. We get that project to a position where it's ready to be funded. And we have to try and move that project over into the engineering department and get it tied up with a road capital program job where there's hopefully enough money to fund them all and fund things, and we try and tag it into one of those jobs and get it built. These are things beyond the scale of what your public works department can even legally do in most cases. Next type of project we have is sort of minimum standard projects where throughout the system, because permitting wasn't available until, really 2000 or so, that really was focused on drainage. So you have years and years of culverts in the ditches. Some are undersized, they're different things. They don't meet minimum standards. So we need to try and deal with that. And I think a lot of the questions we get are, how are you going to tackle that? It's just such a huge group of projects. So we feel like the best way to tackle that is in conjunction with the road capital improvement program. You have a road program that goes through your road system systematically, annually, with a certain amount of roads. Actually, about 100 miles of road are done each and every year in the road system. And we feel like that's the perfect time to have pre-engineered and made recommendations for sort of minimum standard upgrades to those roads. And so what our team is doing is trying to get ahead of Tim Connor's team in terms of looking at the list that gets established, and understand what we can recommend within reason to get put into those road projects to improve the drainage while we're there. So there's one disruption to the citizen who lives out there. We get a kind of a bang for our buck in the overall bidding process, and we have a systematic approach. Now, it's going to take some time to go through all the roads. Y'all know we have significant knowledge of roads. Not all of them are in need of upgrades, but there's a pretty good number. So at least we have a process, we have a plan to identify, provide recommendations, and hopefully systematically work through all the roads and try and bring them to minimum standards. And so let me show you this on a map, which I believe, it's a little hard to see, especially if you can see it on your screen. This is a very busy map because it's all the things that are going on to improve drainage in Calcasieu Parish at this instant. And so let me share with you what some of these things mean. Like I said, I understand it's hard to see, and you have copies and a little closer, but we'll focus on the bigger dots first. Those, the red ones, are what we just termed the street-level hotspot projects. These are people who desperately need a project near their home at their street level right now. The blue ones are regional projects, just like we described. They're going to be located near these problems, but they're going to be
Just 1 minute.
I'm sorry?
Brian, could we have one of the...
Oh, I'm sorry, they didn't hand them.
Those out to us?
My bad.
Yours was wanting a copy. No, it's okay, you good.
Thank
you.
Okay, so the larger blue dots are the big regional watershed projects that are the 7 that we described. Again, 5 of those are basically channel enlargements or channel improvement. 2 of those are regional detention ponds. You're familiar with one of them for sure. We just purchased, attempted to purchase the land. I think we got permission to purchase the land on the Louisiana Avenue. And so that's that type of project. the green stars are regional detention ponds as well that are conceptual in nature. They're basically we've either talked to a landowner in this area, or we are trying to identify landowners in these areas that where we feel like the property is strategically located on a major lateral that will be, if we could get a significant piece there and we finish the study efforts, then we have an opportunity to put in a new regional detention system that in essence will starve the main lateral of water, allow it to flow a little lower in its peak times. So under that, a little harder to see, but there is the smaller dots, which are the capital improvement programs that are bridges. And I know we tend to like to think that bridges are just road projects, but they're not. They have a lot of drainage inside every bridge project. We may be widening that bridge to be wide enough to fit the lateral or a future lateral. We're always looking at the drop pipes that are associated with the road ditches that are generally there, and we're making improvements and really trying to set ourselves up to improve the drainage around there, and oftentimes the bridge is a critical component of the system. So all the bridge projects are in this program, and they affect the drainage. And then what you also see highlighted are the roads throughout Calcasieu Parish that are in the next 3 years of the capital improvement program, which would be the ones that we're currently looking at, analyzing, and trying to get a recommendation ready for those roads as they come through the program, so that hopefully we can make those minor minimum standard improvements that are needed most out there. And that's so when you put all this together, it's a pretty outstanding capital approach to it, outstanding in terms of very expensive. It has a wide range of impact throughout the parish, and it's got a systematic approach. It's going to take a system and years of sticking with it to really improve the drainage. So I like to, I do have one map that sort of, it follows up to this one. It's just zoomed in a little closer. This is actually in the Shoepick Bayou area. And it's just wanted to show you briefly. I'm not going to go through it all again, but if you zoomed in on it a little bit, you just see that there's a number of the roads are highlighted there. They're going to come up in the program. That's the opportune time to try and fix drainage problems there. We have a number of the hotspot projects in this area. We have a coalition identified regional detention pond north of the Sulphur. That's strictly a project to try and improve Bayou Den's conditions. And then we have a green star over here as well as one that's strictly there to try and find a spot to improve Shoepick Bayou conditions. So, we're working on all these fronts, and that's really the focus of projects. We can talk, and you can ask me any questions you want on that. But again, I would not defer looking at or recommend deferring looking at ordinance changes, which are really the long-range solution to everything, in lieu of doing all this first. We're going to be at capital projects for years. We really will, and it's going to take a lot of money. So I'm not sure I could ever recommend waiting whatever amount of time that's going to be. So to catch you up and give you a bit of an update on the ordinances. First off, this has already been approved by you, the police jury, this policy framework, these three things that set the stage for everything that you asked us to build into the ordinance. Basically, you build a site having no impact from a runoff standpoint. You build a site, we want no impact from a storage and a floodplain standpoint, and if you build something, build it high enough that if it does flood, that particular structure won't flood. And that's as simple as it gets. So everything about the ordinance changes fall from this direction that was passed in 2016 by the full police jury. Chapter 26, is a large chapter. These are the articles that have actually been updated. These are the key changes. Most of you have sat through one of my presentations, at least. I will not go through them all, but again, these are the key changes that the ordinances touch on in depth. So those ordinances, the draft that is under review now. We're posted on the website June 13th last month. So it's been there a month. And really, as we get into the next couple slides, just prior to that, we had held a series of stakeholder meetings with the really, I'd call them the stakeholders that are really the business and developers, and those who are most directly affected by the ordinances, obviously. We had individual or large group meetings with them specifically. That was sort of the first phase of stakeholder meetings. Since this is sort of since this date, 6/13 would be sort of the second phase of stakeholder and public meetings to just try and get as much feedback as we can to understand, you know, the request as people review the ordinances. So this has been the meeting schedule. I got to apologize. There's one date incorrect there. It says June 24th. That was actually June 29th on that middle meeting. But these are the meetings that are the recent public meetings for feedback that we have held, and tonight is included in that bunch as, you know, your police jury meeting and an opportunity if anyone would like to speak. So the stakeholder feedback in and of itself has been significant. We've had a lot of input. I won't go through these because I know most of you have seen these slides. You're more than welcome to ask me a question in any one of these after I'm concluded, but the stakeholders and the people looking at this touched on all the good subjects. They really asked good questions. Trying to get the slide to change. Here we go. There's a couple of these, so really they cover the entire waterfront of the changes. And again, we tried to, as those question and answers came in, we tried to incorporate as much of this into the redrafts of the ordinance. There's been several drafts internally that just you keep working this till you think you got it right. So to the point where the draft ordinance on the 13th was actually published. The revisions, as like I said, have gone on. We have tried to remain focused on how to really, the ordinances are there to reduce long-term flooding issues, to stop the bleeding, and to keep it from getting worse. So it has to work in conjunction with a lot of projects, but if we put projects out there and just overwhelm them with new rainwater and infilling the floodplain, then those projects will become null and void over time. So basically, it's just like we said, we really need to have a strategy that covers the entire waterfront. We have attempted to make the revisions straight from the feedback as much as we can. Some of those changes, I will not go through these. You've probably seen these slides as well. These are the sort of, this set of slides here are the changes that were June 13th. So a lot of feedback, a lot of changes. Again, you can ask me about these if you'd like. What I want to focus on a little bit is the latest changes. Since June 13th, we had a lot of long meetings, had a lot of comments. Go back after the meeting, we watch those videos, we study the comments, we listen, we try and figure out what can we do better. We go through a process of just trying to improve the wording. So some of the latest changes, and these are not all worded into the ordinance, but these are all things that we're seriously entertaining at this point because of feedback. So we're looking at revising the waiver set that goes with the runoff management plan. Really, we're looking at trying to get something that's a little more consistent with what's there today, sort of just changing the numbers, but use the same wording. We feel like that'll be easier on the staff to implement. We feel like that'll be easier on the people who use the ordinance in their business to understand it and understand the changes. We're looking at reducing the design requirements if you have a waiver. So one of the key and hardest parts to deal with is the way the ordinances are written is you can get a waiver for a study, but then in the very next section of the ordinance, you can be asked to do a lot of design work for a project that just got a waiver. And so we're trying to really sever that a little better so that when you do get a waiver, it is considered a project that's relatively minor, and we don't need you to turn around and still have to hire an engineer to design your site as much as possible. So We're looking at language to try and make sure that the waiver is got a value. Reducing the survey and monument requirements is something that came straight out of the comments. Modern technology in the surveying industry has really reduced the need for a lot of things. And so someone pointed that out, and it's a good change. So that's there. It's be a significant change, but it's really going to help those people who build subdivisions lay it out, and less things that they have to actually do. Revising the grading plan requirements. One of the questions that came along early on was, if you're building a subdivision, somehow it's got really large lots, the grading plan may be a little hard to accomplish, and we agree with that. So we have backed down the requirements there to help accommodate it. If you have a subdivision with really large lots, over 2 acres, that the grading plan is deferred to a little later time when the individual homes are being built. And the last one is field limits on existing lots. You know, this is one that y'all wrestle with as individual jurors all the time. You'll find people building on an existing lot. They're elevating their structure to the right elevation that they're being asked to, and the amount of field dirt that it takes to do that ends up impacting their neighbors. And it's really not a good situation for anyone involved. So we're looking at revisions in that group to make sure that number one, when a new subdivision is built, we feel like we have it covered, but it's that group of building and construction that is really generally some existing lot that we want to try and find a better way to balance that out. So the next steps to wrap up, we're here on the 13th. This is just an update. No real action expected. Be glad to answer questions. August 8th is anticipated. If Mr. Scott's going to be in town, we haven't had time to check with him, but he's the drainage chairman, and so August 8th could be the most likely date for the next drainage committee meeting, where we would seek the committee's recommendation to go to the full jury. August 22nd is another date that we need to get back to the Planning and Zoning Board. We met with them on Tuesday night, and basically gave them a little bit of more of a detailed presentation. We need to go back there and receive their comments. And then if all continues on this path, then August 24th would be the earliest it would get back to the police jury for consideration. So with that, I will be happy to take questions, or if Brian has anything he'd like to add. And then, like I said, we'll take questions if there's any.
Thank you, Mr. Wainwright, for that presentation. You and your staff did an outstanding job in preparing a lot of this based on some of the information that was given to you at some of the other meetings that we had prior to this. But we do have some discussion by some of the jurors, and I'll go ahead and start with Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. No questions. I just have a comment for anybody that hasn't had the time yet to go visit with Alan. I actually got a chance this morning. We sat down and went over all of this it takes a while. I mean, you're not going to be up there 15 minutes. So, but really, I encourage you to do that. I learned a lot, and you know, now I'm going to go back and read some more and go over it, and I'm sure I'll be back again. So, I would just encourage that everybody does that. I mean, you can't really make a good decision on this unless you go through that process and really get into it and understand. And he's very helpful. He answered all the questions that I had, and I'm sure he'll do the same for y'all. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Barris.
We saw about the flood, the flood cameras or whatever. I don't believe that was received too well. Tell me more about that so I can sell it.
Well, I'll be glad to. Number one,
or maybe I can do that later. Maybe I'll just.
It's up to you. I'll be glad. Let me just try and give a few comments on the flood alert system. So we're working on every front that we know of and possible to improve drainage and flooding. And there's a significant amount of money to be spent. And I saw some of the comments, and I understand that there may be some negative comments in terms of maybe the money should be spent somewhere else and do some other things with it. But The reality is, the bulk of your flood alert system is being paid for by FEMA through grants and things like that. Not this particular part of the study, but that is a multi-million-dollar system that has come through the hazard mitigation program. We've got a lot of reimbursements for that. And we are, as a community, well in advance of, and I would say the envy of a lot of communities, with the rain gauge system that we have. And the rain gauge system gives you the ability to truly understand how much rain is falling, exactly when, and what that does for us is it allows us to allocate public works resources on those days in particular. It lets us study, the engineers study the storms and see the reactions of the system. But when it moves over into flood alert, and I don't know if Mr. Grimion is here tonight, but when you are having a bad day and you need to do things, and the flood alert systems are huge in terms of life safety issues on those days. So I get it. They would rather see money built into projects, but when you're saving lives based on flood alert systems or any type of alert system, it's hard to put a price tag on that. And so I would love to talk to anyone that really sees it different. But, you know, I think it's just a little bit of I understand their passion for getting projects in the ground. I just would like for them to understand that there is everything, that there's a broader picture, and we're trying to save lives on those days.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paris. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Alan, y'all got a lot of great measures that are in this document that make a lot of sense. What I'm worried about is that with the regulations that we're going to push into our system, the vast majority of the runoff that takes place that causes the problems that we have are in the incorporated areas. And if they're not on board, not doing the same thing we're doing, is any of this going to make a difference at the end of the day? Or are we just a smidgen of the solution if we don't have the incorporated areas on board with this? You know, you're getting, because what we've seen with zoning cases, for instance, when they don't like the decision we give them, they move into the city and they get their way, a different way, maybe get a little more along the lines of what they want. So they just go jump and get incorporated, and then they got a new set of rules to go by. And I think if we don't play this out right, the regulations that we push down are going to get, they're just going to push the developments into the incorporated areas, and we have no control over that at that point. Even worse than that is that these regulations push the development out of the parish if it makes it cost prohibitive. So I think those are the things that we've got to work on really hard, is to get the entire parish doing the same thing, or maybe we don't have any kind of great impact at the end of the day. So that's the things I'm struggling with. But what's in there is good stuff.
Thank you.
I think they're good measures that'll be effective, but they got to be effective everywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Scott.
Mr. White, go first.
Okay, I'll move to you, Mr. White.
I just wanted to echo what Mr. Landry had to say at the one-on-one meeting with you. Answered a lot of questions with what I had with the ordinance. One of the things that did come out of our conversation is I know at the end of the day, when we have impact fees that's going to come out of this new ordinance, we're going to hear it from our constituents. Where's that money going? Is it going into a pool? Is the residents of Ward 1, clearly everybody's seen the map, in which I do want a blown-up version of that map of all the projects that we're planning and hoping for Moss Bluff or Ward 1. The money they pay in for an unincorporated area, because that's where your majority of your impact fees are going to come from. How can we put it into a thing? I know we talked. We need to break up watersheds. You just can't keep the money for Ward 1 into Ward 1, because at the end of the day, there's not going to be a whole lot of money within that impact fee. But it still needs to stay within that watershed for projects at a later date. Is that something we can still look into?
we will, yes, sir, is the answer to, so if there ultimately is impact fees and you do collect them, you really end up with a decision. Yeah, it's sort of down in details, but it's a decision that has to be made, is where, how, and where will that money be spent? And so, obviously, we would love it to be spent, and it should be spent only on good drainage projects. I would like to see that limited to regional watershed projects as much as possible, because that's really what they're trying to offset. It's an impact to the regional, the whole watershed system, not so much the street level. You're really trying to take a large watershed perspective. So you could limit the funds that come out of one watershed to be spent in that watershed, or you can take the funds, put them into a more all watersheds pot, and use the money for projects at the highest priority parish-wide. It's really just a choice. Obviously, the second choice gives you more flexibility. You're going to be able to, I think you'll be able to put projects together with that money quicker, because you'll be able to turn the corner on projects from a funding standpoint. And understand one thing, the scale of money here we're talking about, it does add up. And on any one particular job, your house, or you're adding something, it's significant to you as an individual. But the projects that we highlighted there, the street leveled hotspot projects, are going to average $50,000 to $500,000 to do those projects. And you saw all the big red dots. The regional watershed projects are going to average $1 million to $10 million and on up. Tremendous cost to these projects. So this amount of money that this 22 cents is proposed for impact fees is going to pale in comparison to the overall bill. All right, so it won't be near enough. You're going to have to infuse large capital funding into the program. And that is really, we're looking at the ordinances as the number one challenge. Paying for the program will be the number one challenge to try and do projects. So that is the whole reason why our strategy is to take you toward regional detention versus projects that are enlarging big ditches. Number one, those projects are cheaper, easier to get into the ground, get done, and they have probably better long-term impact. That's the reason for that. So scale of the impact fee is going to be small relative to the project, so I almost recommend putting it into a general pot for that very reason, so that it will add up in time to do projects in a timely fashion. If you disperse it into 10 large watersheds, some of those watersheds are never going to have enough money through their impact fee to do a project. So I would recommend maintain flexibility to set your priorities on the highest project and go that route, but this will be a choice for the police jury to decide.
Thank you. You'll be back.
Thank you, Mr. White. And I'll have Mr. Scott have the closing comments.
Thank you. Mr. Wainwright, after going through your presentation tonight and line by line, PowerPoint by PowerPoint, sounds a lot like a plan. I mean, I kind of recognize it as this is where we're heading, this is what we've been doing, this is where we're thinking. So would you consider what you just gave us tonight a solid plan for this parish? Could we call what you've done tonight a plan to move forward?
Yes, sir. I mean, I really do. I understand, too, though, the questions that get asked about a master plan and things like that, and I understand that. But this is a strategy and a plan that gives you a way to deal with long-range issues, short-range issues, watershed-size issues, street-level things. Like I say, the weakest part of the plan is going to be paying for it. And I really hate to say that, but it is an expensive thing to go build drainage projects, extremely expensive, and that's why our plan focuses on the cheapest, most cost-effective approach, which is really regional detention ponds that try and starve those laterals from the water that's causing the flooding. It's really just that simple.
All right. When you mentioned section 26-216, I don't want to get so light on the waiver that now all of a sudden the waiver is, really, I mean, so I don't need a lot of discussion on it, but there's still got the waiver, we still want to make sure they do some things to take care of flooding. We don't want to just say, oh, well, it's all good. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is an attempt, I'm going to tell you, in writing the entire ordinance, the most complex part to figure out has been the waiver structure. Because in essence, the way the ordinances are architected, that basically you start off in every type of new development, we've discussed this, is required to do a study and to do detention. And then every type. So immediately, everyone is in the pool who has to do it. But there's some obvious ones who it's not really necessary. And a good, most obvious example is someone adding on a carport to their house or a very simple residential project. There is no need to study that and have a high cost at engineering and all things that go into that and a long planning process and permitting process, right? So you have to find a way now to get those people to not have to do this stuff. So you have to have a waiver process. The reason why we're looking at entertaining going back to a structure that looks just like our old structure is, with changes, of course, but the reason why I wanted to look the same is that, number one, everyone understands it. We've been using that system for years now. Granted, the thresholds within it is what needs to be adjusted. Our thresholds have been too high. But we can use the same pattern, the same structure of waiver system and adjust the thresholds to get the right things studied. So familiarity on the staff side is good for consistency. Familiarity on the public side for use. Some of these people have used the system many, many times. So it's a lot easier for me to adjust that impervious area has dropped from 40,000 square foot to 10 and understand that everything's the same with that, or versus a whole new set of wording that I got to figure out how it works and what's in and what's out. So really the reason for doing that is familiarity, and we really feel like we're going to accomplish the same level of additional study that needs to happen so that we can protect those properties that are going to be adjacent, going to be affected by new development.
all right. Thank you. And with two last statements, one to follow up on Mr. Farnham's. Right now, and I'm just speculating, but there's neighborhoods going down Lake Street and they border the parish. And so it's then become city to build that subdivision. Now there's another sign that just went up on Lake Street that is on our border that I'm pretty sure there's going to be a light blue sign that comes up on front of it pretty soon. So if we don't somehow at least protect the fringe areas that we talk so much about, especially on the, if we can't figure out the rest of the fringe areas right now, we've got to at least figure out the drainage part of it. We've got to come to some kind of agreement, even if we agree what the fringe area is and make that a priority. So I know I've asked for the meeting with the drainage committee at the city of Lake Charles, so I know we're putting that together. So that's something we really we've got to dig deep into that. The last thing is, I do recommend that every juror that hasn't been able to sit with you and read every one of those revisions, word for word. I appreciate you sitting with me and Ms. Mayo. I mean, we did word for word every page of that thing, and so lots of good information, lots of good changes. So, I think we still got a little ways we can go and continue to sharpen it. My last thing I'll recommend is you do the planning and zoning on August, what was the date?
22nd.
Let's see.
August
22nd. I think that will be quite a crowd. I'm just thinking, so maybe the 24th is pretty quick to all of a sudden come right back to the jury. Maybe we look at the first meeting in September so that we still have a couple more weeks to really see because I'd hate to all of a sudden, not that we have to act on it, but let's see what happens that night. I mean, we can leave the date, we can always change it, but I think 22nd, 24th might be a little fast because that's when people usually show up whenever it's time to say, hey, we're going to do this. This place is going to load up. So I'd like some time to digest it, I think. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, for those last comments. And Mr. Wainwright, we just want to say again, thank you for all the work that you and your staff have done in putting this together. And believe me that your hard work hasn't gone unnoticed, and we do appreciate your efforts in doing this. Thank you again. The chair at this time would entertain a motion.
Move to receive report.
I have a motion by Mr. Barris to receive report and a second by Vice President Graham to receive report. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 14, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the call for a election by Community Center and Playground District Number 4 of Ward 1 to be held on November 18, 2017. Authorizing the renewal, levy, and collections of a special sales tax of 5 mills on all properties beginning January 1st, 2018 for the purpose of paying the cost of maintaining and operating public buildings, community centers, and for the cost of constructing and improving recreational facilities of the district. I have a motion by Mr. White and a second by Mr. Fornum. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 15, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the addition of the Title I Youth Program Service to the current Title I Adult and Dislocated Worker Program Service.
Move to adopt.
I have a motion by Vice President Brain.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 16, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the Calcasieu Parish Taxing Authority Industrial Tax Exemption Program and designating Ms. Tammy Buffkin, Parish Treasurer, as the parish designee. I have a motion by Mr. Fornum and a second by Ms. Mayo. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 17, consideration of adopting a resolution
Move on
approving
17.
the professional engineering contract between the police jury and Charles Latner and Associates for the Prien Lake Park Boat Launch Extension Program. I have a motion by Mr. Brain and a second by Mr. Guillory. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 18, consideration of authorizing the
Move on
parish
18.
purchasing agent to advertise for
Same
bids
bullets.
for the following. I have a motion by Mr. Brame on both bullets. Let me read those into the record. A, Prien Lake Park Boat Launch Extension Program. And B, Highway 90 Boat Ramp Project. I had a motion by Mr. Brame on all bullets and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 19, take appropriate actions on bids received by the parish purchasing agent for the following.
Move on 19, both bullets.
Second.
I had a motion by Mr. Fornum on both bullets. Thank you for that. And I had a second by Mr. Barris. Let me read those into the record. A, for collections and distribution pipe and fittings. B, Public Works East and West Solid Waste Convenience Center repairs and improvement project. There were 7 bids that were submitted. The agenda notes reads, the project architect recommended that the low bid in the amount of $534,500 for Trahan Construction LLC be accepted. I had a motion by Mr. Fornum and a second by Mr.
What? I got discussion.
Who was my second by?
You did?
Barris. My second was by Mr. Barris. But we do have discussion on item 19. Mr. White.
Can someone clarify, I know you says distribution of pipe and fittings, and then it goes back into the improvements of these centers. Can somebody clarify that a little bit?
Okay. It's 2 separate items, Mr. White.
So that's one bid for both items, is what you're saying?
No, A is the B, the only thing that applies to B is the list of the 8 bids. A is separate now. I don't know if that's on the attachment. If you look at the attachment,
Okay.
it'll show you those.
What improvements are happening at these facilities?
You mean B?
And B, correct.
East End Waste Solid Waste Convenience Center. Mr. Wainwright, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Goody. We're a couple things. First off, trying to squeeze a little extra capacity out of them. So at the East Maintenance, we have a little extra room there. Some of the rearranging of the containers in the wall structure is going to allow us to get 3 or 4 more additional 40-yard containers in service on the deck that's there. Also, if you've been to them, those decks are aggregate. We're going to be finishing those with concrete. And the lower decks on the ground level where the containers are moved and transferred around, it's aggregate and it gets tore up. And so we're concrete will be placed there so that it'll be a little easier for the loaders and guys to come in and transfer them out. We have to do a lot of swapping to stay up with the loads we get. So they're constantly moving those containers in and out as the trucks are coming to load them. So concrete's just going to help it be more efficient. And then, like I said, we're going to try and squeeze a little extra capacity out of them to just make them go as far as we can. They're busy sites.
I've been to these facilities, used these facilities, and they're very nice facilities. And I brought this up for a reason, because I've asked in the past, Moss Bluff, we have a parish barn there. There's a little room there to where we can have some kind of space for some roll-off dumpsters, maybe not to the capacity of these facilities, but at the end of the day, we have to cross 2 bridges with material going to these facilities for disposal. Crossing the Calcasieu River Bridge and the West Fork Bridge, I still would like to see one day possibly working something of a smaller scale within our area so we don't have to cross these bridges for disposal. I yield back.
Mr. White, did you have anything you wanted to add, Mr. Wainwright? Okay. Mr. Farnham, I'll go on.
Thank you, Mr. President. I got to sing a little praise for these units. These have to be in the top 10 of things that have been done in Calcasieu Parish over the years. I can't even tell you how many people make comments about how well they're run, how professionally they're run. The staff that is out there helps them at every turn. They'll jump out there and they'll help them unload stuff. I know they're probably not part of their job scope, but they don't mind. When they see somebody in a bind, they'll jump out there and give them a hand. And it's an exceptional job that's being done. And I can't agree with you more that there should be a third one of these sites to some magnitude in Moss Bluff, because they are carrying a lot of that trash down our roads, and it creates another issue all by itself. So when we first talked about this many years ago, we talked about a site up there, and that one day maybe it could be accomplished. And maybe one day when they put that cent-and-a-half sales tax in place up there.
That's in Moss Bluff.
2-4. They'll have a convenience center in Moss Bluff, along with some funds to do some drainage projects. So I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good comment, Mr. White. Truly needed.
You walked into that.
Any other discussion? Any objection? Before we close, I have a point of first privilege by Mr. Scott.
I just want to go back to 17 and 18. So 17, we're asking for a professional engineering contract, and then in 18, you're all of a sudden asking to go out for bids on the project. Can you give me some clarification? Are they going to be overseeing that project? I'm not quite sure. Well, just clarify what's happening on that.
Please state your name and position with the parish, please.
Dean Kelly, and Director of Facilities. Oftentimes we come and ask for permission to enter into a designer's contract first, and then several months later we'll come back to you and ask permission to advertise. With this project, we needed to get through a good bit of the planning to realize exactly what the designer's contract would be. So we've done that, and the timeline to complete the plans is short. So we're asking all at the same time so that I don't ask you for permission for the designer's contract tonight and come back 2 weeks to a month later and ask permission to advertise.
So you already been designing who's been designing the project already? I mean, if we're going out I'm just saying, they're gonna put together something in a couple weeks, this engineering firm, for you to go out and bids? Have they been doing work on it for nothing at this point to figure out? I'm just unsure what's happening.
So, whatever the catalyst is that starts a project, whether it's a brainstorm that want to build something new or it's a maintenance project, you have to get together and you have to really realize what that is. There's a certain amount of study that goes into that so that you can actually memorialize that project into the contract. So there's a certain amount of upfront work that takes place before you can ever enter into the contract. That has happened.
Okay. So, but we don't even know what the budget is for that project yet. Now all of a sudden we do on the engineer, you didn't even give us a budget that this might be, and now we're going out for bids. I'm just a little, I know we already made motions on it, I'm just a little.
So by the time a project gets to this point, the staff has been working on it for some time. We've been working on this project for years now. Many of you, I mean, every one of you know the issues with different facilities. So myself, my staff, you know, members of you know, Parish engineers, and everyone combined, we've been working on this for a while. So we knew pretty much what the budget was going to be. We've budgeted for that. And then once we have that, and the project is going to move forward, we get into those discussions with the designers, we finalize everything, then we get into the contracts, and then we move forward.
I guess the easiest thing to ask you is, since you have a budget for this, we budgeted into 2017 already, so I guess that's the final, the question I want to know. So you already did have a number.
Yes, sir.
It's in 2017 already. All right, I'm good with it now. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Are there any other discussion? Mr. Guillory, you have the floor.
Just on item 13 on Mr. Barris, because we're on an off week, I don't think we set the date, because we said 30 days, and I know we're on an off week. I don't think we set the date to actually have it come back.
It's gonna keep you up tonight, ain't it? It was just. No, we didn't. So we need to set that date right here now?
August 24th will be the day.
There we go. Just wanted to remind you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for that heads up, Mr. Guillory. Is there any other discussion need to take place? Mr. Beam, are you good with everything that was discussed tonight?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion and a second. Now adjourn.
Yeah, but did what you should ask.